Yo, let's get the business.
Let's get the business. Michelle Kail of the CASA Group, which stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates for Children. She's the executive director of the program. Michelle here is to share with us the special significance of the program, involving some of the activities, pieces of her background, some origin of the program, and how she got going. This is a great program. It's a necessity. I wanted to play my part in this, drawing the awareness and recognition. You're accompanied by gracious coworkers, volunteers who have clearly been able to establish genuine love, care, and consideration and nurturing for these children, which is such a remarkable effort. Tremendous positive impact, healthy seeds to grow, excellent example of resilience, dedication, and true action and implementation that all communities are in dying need of. All these communities need this help.
Absolutely.
Youngins are often led astray across the globe, so it takes a strong village, right? You are aiding toward the neglected, the abused, unfortunate, parenting mishandles, lack of parenting, home issues, unstable environments. We've all been bear witness to this problem in some form or fashion, whether directly or indirectly, and it just breaks your heart whenever you see it. So I'm here today with Michelle. She's going to break down the program and what it means to her and how she got going as the executive director. How you feeling?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here, excited to share about CASA. So, as you mentioned, CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates for Children.
Yes.
And kind of how that program works is we're primarily a volunteer-based organization. We do have some staff, but most of our staff, their role is to supervise and support the volunteers that are directly serving the children. So the only reason we typically get more staff is if we have more volunteers and we're able to serve more kids.
Yes. Volunteers come on up.
Yes. So like I said, primarily volunteer-based. Yeah. And so what our CASA volunteers do, I'll just kind of give you the rundown of like the vetting process, and then what does it look like when a CASA volunteer starts work on a case. So, if you're interested, first step is filling out an application, reaching out to us, letting us know in some capacity, and if we already know you and think you might be a good fit, we might reach out to you.
Absolutely.
But that application process, fill out the application. We have a wonderful advocate trainer that calls individuals and she'll bring them in for an interview.
Yes.
And the interview sometimes, I always like to tell people, it might feel a little invasive at first because some of the questions are very personal.
Right.
About your upbringing or, how you've experienced discipline as a child, different things like that, because we want to make sure that we're getting individuals who are going to be a good fit to work with these kiddos, but we also want to make sure that if an individual or potential CASA volunteer is going to serve on a case, that we're taking good care of them too, and that if there's going to be something in their background that might be triggering, we want to make sure to be mindful of that. So we'll go through that interview process, and then she'll get them started on training, which, don't freak out, but it's about 30 hours of training. I feel like that always gives people
it's mandatory.
They're like, oh man, 30 hours is a lot of hours. But okay, it's broken up into 6 different sessions, and Krista does session 1 with the advocate during the interview, with the potential advocate during that interview.
Down some of those
cut
hours.
some of that down. And then from there, some of the 30 hours is working on independent work, like reading through case files, things like that. Just getting to know what exactly does it mean to be a CASA volunteer, and they'll meet virtually for the first few sessions, and then the last 2 sessions we like to meet in person for that training because the content is a little bit more, and we're working on a practice court report for that session, and so that's usually where people they're like, I've got more questions, and they might need a little bit more support or more guidance during that last session.
Right.
So the 30 hours typically knock it out in anywhere from, we've seen some people get it done in like 2 to 3 weeks, and we've seen some people get it done in like 4 to 6 weeks. So we really work with whatever pace someone is comfortable with, to make sure that they get what they need out of training and have the tools and resources to proceed as a CASA volunteer. And then which I think is one of the most impactful things, is once all the training, the homework, all that stuff is done, that 30 hours is completed, then our potential CASA volunteers go and do a court observation. They get sworn in with our local court judges, and then they get to observe that dependency, neglect, abuse court. And that is the best hands-on learning you can get. Is
definitely hands-on.
To watch all the things play out.
Yeah.
And then from there, they get assigned to what we call an advocate coordinator, which typically they've met at some point during training. But our advocate coordinators, they're our case managers / volunteer supervisors. So they're kind of think of them as like the Swiss Army knife of CASA. They're kind of your one-stop shop of all of your info that you need, making sure you have what you need for your case, looking over your court report to make sure things are kosher before it gets sent on. And then from there, that's when our CASAs get assigned to their first case. And we, like I said, we do try to give people some type of preference. I always use the example that I have a little one at home, and so for me, working with like the little kids, it weighs a little too heavy on the heart.
Right.
But I taught middle and high school before I came on with
a former educator.
Yeah. So, but I feel good about being able to connect with the older kiddos, and it doesn't hit so close to home. So for me, that's something I might share as a preference, that I would really like to work with older kids. Or sometimes we have men who want to come in and volunteer, and they're like, you know what, I feel called to really work with and support our young men who are navigating foster care. And so we try to make sure that people have a good connection with their first case. So that way, you feel like because you are making a difference. We want you to feel like you're making a difference. If
someone can relate to your story, that add into the transparency and connectivity. So that makes total sense. Because like I mentioned you before, I've worked with children. I have my own. I've done work for United Way. I've done some coaching, umpiring, but this is next level. This is a lot more hands-on. This is visiting frequently and consistently events and their unique stories, because every story is different. Like you said, it's neglected, abused, and unfortunate, but there's also just different aspects of their story that make them unique.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, most of the kids that we're working with are in foster care in some capacity, whether they're placed in a traditional foster home, or if they're with a relative or a family friend. And I know that a lot of times everybody kind of hears about kids in foster care kind of falling through the cracks, and we see unfortunately a lot of transition with these children, because they might be in a foster home and then get moved to a different one, and they might end up all over the state. We've even had a couple of them end up out of state, and every time that they end up in a new environment, it's a new school with new teachers and new friends, new peers, new therapists, new doctors, potentially a new social worker. And so one of the things that, talking about getting to really know the kids and what's going on in their life, that's where CASA really plays a big role, because through all that transition, our goal is to provide an ever-changing, or a constant person for them in their ever-changing world. And so, they don't get a new CASA each time they go to a different place. Their CASA that they got when they started with us is the CASA that we aim to keep them with throughout the entirety of their case.
Absolutely.
And most cases last about 2 years. We've had some with our older kids. I know you talked a little bit about older youth. Sometimes they get to a point where it's very unlikely that they're going to get adopted. And so then we kind of switch to a new goal. Instead of, getting them adopted, the permanency that we try to help them achieve is through independence, making sure that they're going to be able to take care of themselves. And so being that constant presence, getting to know them. And I would say that our CASA volunteers really have two main responsibilities. Number one is to build a relationship with that child.
That's key.
And not to be a friend, but to build a strong relationship as a resource. I always kind of equate it to parenting. I love my child, but we're not friends. My job is to set a good example and guide them, and be there for her, and do whatever needs to be done to make sure that she's growing into a well-rounded individual. And that's that's very similar to how it feels to be a CASA. Sometimes they don't like what you have to say.
It's grooming. It's tough love. It's
so they don't, they don't always like what you have to say. Might not always like the recommendations that you have, but you know that you've gotten all the information, and the most important thing is that even when they are mad at you, like, you keep showing up,
right?
And they see that, and eventually they realize, like, you know what, I might not like what Michelle had to say or what she wrote in the court report, but I know I could call her anytime I need something. Right. And that's really what, the kind of relationship that you're building with the child or the kiddos that you're working with.
That's a good point, because discipline and structure doesn't always look the most beautiful, but it's needed. Yeah. And they don't want to hear it all the time, but it's hard, especially, some of our older kids, they get like 15, 16 years old, and they know everything. You can't tell them anything. Right.
But the reality of the situation is that we're really just trying to instill the skills into them. And then our little kids that we work with,
absolutely,
they don't know what's going on in the situation, and so being someone who is consistently present in their life to tell them, like, look, it's okay, I know this is scary, here's what you can expect, or telling a little kid that they're going to have to go to court. And I mean, I know the first time I went into a courtroom, I was like, this is very intimidating, and I was there for work, so I'm like, it's an intense and very intense situation, and so being able to kind of tell them, like, what to expect, and who's the judge and who's their attorney, because they get an attorney,
absolutely,
and also to just know, like, hey, I'm your CASA and I'm going to be there with you the whole time. So like, if you need to hold my hand, if you if you need me to bring you a stuffed animal, like, whatever the situation is, making sure that they know we are there for them.
Reassurance.
So it goes a long way with building that relationship, and so that's the first main responsibility for our CASA volunteers is building the relationship.
Fully engaged, though.
Yes, very much so.
Embarking a major level of selflessness, and you're coordinating, and you're putting your time, your effort, dedication. Like I said, it takes a village. It really does. But this is a wonderful service that you provide. I hope every community has it. I wish every county and every city has a program at least similar to CASA, initiating and taking the steps, because this issue does affect just about every community. It does. Just about every single community. And I grew up seeing it. I grew up seeing the unfortunate, the neglected, the list goes on. So I see what the effects do. So I wanted to play my part somehow. So here I am. But so geographically, where'd you grow up at?
So I actually grew up in Tennessee, in Clarksville, Tennessee, right outside of Fort Campbell and Nashville area. But I've lived here in Hardin County for about 9 years.
I got family down that way, Nashville,
so
Clarksville.
It's a good area, great area to grow up. But
absolutely.
And it makes me sad because I don't think they have a CASA program.
They don't. I was getting into that. I was going to see if they have.
But I'm glad that you brought up, geography. So one thing that is really neat about CASA is that we do have a national and state level organization, and so there is CASA all over the country. And in Kentucky, we are in, I think, 101 out of 120 counties now.
120 counties in Kentucky is wow. That's mind blowing.
So we're working on the last 19. We've got a couple that some areas out in East Kentucky and Southern Kentucky, and just some little pockets here and there that we are. And I say we as in like the entire Kentucky CASA. Network.
Family.
So, everybody kind of tries to play their role. I know when I started with CASA of the Heartland in 2023, we were only serving in Hardin County. Okay. And now we are in Hardin,
LaRue County too, right?
Yep. Hardin, LaRue, Meade, Breckenridge, Grayson, and Hart counties. So in 3 years, we went from 1 county to 6 counties because,
nice.
Like you said, I know for me, I felt called, like, if I can oversee this growth, and I feel... To me, it wasn't even a choice. It was like there are kids going unserved, and they need us. So how do we make it happen? It's not a matter of if, but just how.
Like the action, right? And this is a subject that a lot of people they like to talk and conversate about it around the table, but actually putting in the action.
Yes, very.
I love to see that.
Yeah.
That's very enjoyable. So your early interest, we got that. You as an educator.
Yep.
So you've been operating on a cohesive level for years now, and this is actually shaping. Yeah, this is actually shaping children's future. You know what I mean?
It
If you
really is,
catch them
yeah.
early enough, because like I said, we see what happens once they turn 14, 15, 16. Their mind frame and their curiosity changes.
Yeah.
So I love how you all start early. I seen the story of little Steven on YouTube.
Yes, that was a really
A
great
heartfelt little Lily. You know,
Yep.
I seen those two, and I was just, it was baffling. It was astonishing.
Well, and so I'll tell this story real quick and I'll try not to cry. But we,
Lily got me,
for
man.
Child Abuse Prevention Month, we do our PinWheel plantings, and we do one in each of our 6 counties. And we were in one of our local communities, and we planted all of our pinwheels, and
We'll get into that.
naturally,
The PinWheel event.
we're all like, well, now we need to go out to lunch after. So
Yeah.
we went to a local restaurant for lunch, as my staff and I, and we actually had on our Friend of CASA t-shirts. And
Hold on now. Hold on.
Yeah.
They got a
shameless
few
plug.
more. Shameless plug. I got mine. Well, not yet. These are medium and small. I'm gonna need mine extra large. But yeah, I think these are on the website.
I think now we've taken them down because we have so few left. So
Okay.
now you got to call us.
But blue's actually the April color,
it's the color
of child
for-
abuse neglect
for child abuse
prevention.
prevention. Yeah.
So, but not to cut you off.
No, you're good. So we're all wearing our t-shirts. We go in, we eat our food, and then we go to pay at the register. And the young lady that was at the register that was checking us out, she just kind of looked at us funny and saw our shirts, and she goes, "Are you all with CASA, like the court advocates?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, we are." And she's like, "Well, I had a CASA. I was in foster care, and I had a CASA."
Wow.
And she told us a little bit about her story and her background, that in her teen years she had struggled some with substance abuse, and but that now she was sober, she's working, and even though she was no longer in foster care, that she still had a really strong relationship with her CASA volunteer, and that she checked in with her pretty regularly still.
Wow.
And so that just, it was kind of the, I don't know,
Yeah.
just the cherry on
That
top of a
moment.
day of awareness and
Yes.
mission, because
Yes.
it was that real life
It was that real
moment
situation.
of
Yep.
this young lady who had been a child in foster care,
Right.
who connected with her CASA, who saw that her CASA was there for her,
Yes.
even in her lowest points. They maintained a relationship, and now she's in a stable place. She's working, she's providing for herself, and it was a really sweet,
Fulfilling.
yeah, very, very much so.
Absolutely.
Really cool moment for us.
That was a nice moment to show that that your aid and your assistance, not to say pay off, but the impact and
Yeah.
the positive effect that it has.
And we've had some, even some of our current CASA volunteers are individuals who navigated foster care as in their youth.
That's
and
big.
maybe they had a CASA, or maybe they didn't, and they're like, I turned out okay, but how could my life have been different if I had a CASA volunteer? And so it's been really neat to
Awesome.
just hear other people's stories. Like you
Yes.
said, everybody's got their different stories.
Yeah.
So being able to hear everybody's story and why they want to get connected with CASA, it's very much like you said, it takes a certain level of selflessness and
Yes.
and a big
Consideration.
heart
Consideration and heart.
to
Yeah.
serve as a CASA. So
Funny, we're in the heartland.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was meant to be.
so we love it. And
So who inspired you the most coming up, as far as like mentors or things of that nature?
gosh, I think for me it was, I don't think I can pinpoint like one individual person.
Okay. Collective group.
But I know, like, growing up, I had a lot of really great teachers that, that saw something in me when I was younger. Would make comments to me like, you're a really bright girl. Don't stop trying, or make sure you just keep giving it your all, and things like that. And then of course as I got older, having teachers, or I was in band. I didn't have coaches because
I was getting ready to say that.
I'm not very graceful, but I was a band kid, so my band
Band
teachers
gang.
and
Yeah.
and everything that really just poured into me and and gave me feedback. You know, if I was doing something that was not, you know, maybe kind of out of character, or if I was having a rough time and maybe just didn't seem like myself, just pulling me aside and just asking me like, hey, are you okay? Or I mean, those are the things I think that have been the most impactful to me over the years, is, you know, the people who have cared about you enough, loved you enough to just check in on you and make sure, like, are you okay? And honestly, I think that really ties into what our
it does. That's why I asked
that. Our kiddos,
that longevity of good relationships and connectivity, it plays so much part into educating, and like you said, how you grew up with your mentors, and there's always those few that you just stay connected to no matter what. You may even see them in Kroger one day. You can't get away from them. You know what I mean? So shout out to those people. And what would you consider a major challenge at first, building the foundation of the CASA program, which you just joined a few years ago? Transition from educating to the CASA.
So it's a crazy story. I think it's a crazy story. So I was teaching high school at the time, and I decided to go back to school. My intention was to get my master's degree in English so I could teach dual credit at the high school level. But obviously God had other plans for me, because I'm not doing that.
Show you're right. Yes.
So I went to school. I went to WKU, go Tops. And
the Hilltoppers.
Yep. So I went,
another one.
Finished up my master's degree, and as I was, you know, wrapping up the program, I was still teaching, finishing up the school year, and my academic advisor reached out to me, and she was like, hey, do you want a summer job? And I was like, well, I'm a teacher and we're going to Disney this summer, so yeah, I need extra money. So what are we doing? I think I agreed to it before I even knew what it was. I was like, I trust you.
Show me the chicken.
Something good. So she had been on the board for CASA of South Central Kentucky, which is based out of Bowling Green, and they were going through a leadership transition and really just needed someone to do some behind-the-scenes stuff, grant writing, management, reporting, and she's like, I think you can do this. And I was like, I have no experience with that whatsoever. And she goes, that's all right. She's like, I've been reading your papers for 2 years now. She's like, I know you have the skills. So once you get in and get the understanding of the mission, like, you'll be fine. And like I said, we were going to Disney World, so I wasn't really in a position to turn it down.
Right, it was time to turn up.
So I got connected with the CASA program down there, and my first thought was, how have I been in education for 6 years and I've never heard of CASA? And I'm like, do we have a CASA program, like where I'm at? So I started looking it up, and I found out that we did, and I was like, this is a really, really neat mission, and I was like, also really cool to grow, kind of my skill set with this other CASA program, learning about grants and, the ins and outs of how the organization operates. And she had encouraged me to apply for the position, and they were, like I said, going through leadership change, and she encouraged me to apply for the position that they had open. And I thought about it and prayed about it, and I was like, I don't think I can live, because we were not moving. My husband and we're staying here,
stationary,
which we love. Like, we didn't really want to leave. I'm like, this is our home, but I was like, between the commute and the time zone change and the networking that's required, I'm like, I said, I think this would be really detrimental to my family life, and I don't think it would be good for me. And because at the time my daughter was had just turned 4. And so I'm like, I don't think I can make that work.
So a lot of this was organic.
Yes, very much so.
And split decision making.
Yes. Right. And then, I told her, I said, look, I appreciate that you think enough of me to encourage me to go for this position, but I just logistically, it's not a good fit. If the same position were open, back home and in my area, like, I would absolutely go for it. And my mother-in-law had been a CASA volunteer for a couple months, and we were having family dinner one night, and
so she already had her footing.
She's like, you do something with CASA, and I do something with this other CASA. Like, is it the same CASA? What are we doing? And we started talking about it, and we realized that it was, they were both court-appointed special advocates, local programs. And she's like, well, how did you get involved with them, And so we started talking about it. And
Mi casa, su casa.
Yeah. And so I told her, that story. And she goes, well, I think that the director here just put in her notice that she's going to be retiring at the end of the year. And I was like, what?
Wow.
So I looked into it, and honestly, I tried to talk myself out of it a couple times. I was like, they're not going to
Why do we do that, though? Why do we see stuff right in front of us that's meant for us, and we try to talk our way out of it? We try to find a flaw or a hiccup or a freckle or something.
Like someone's put you in this position, and it's like, I don't think so. But, I thought about it, and one of my really good friends who I had the pleasure of working with at the CASA program at a Bowling Green, she called me up, and she's like, Michelle, quit being an idiot. She's like, God put you here. She's like, any other person, she's like, this is an opportunity where someone is putting you on a path, and all you need to do is take the first step.
It was spiritual too,
and very much so.
It's your calling. Do you feel like that?
Very much, very much so. And I loved teaching, and I honestly, like I said, wasn't really looking to get out of it. It just,
because teaching's great too.
Kind of everything just kind of fell into place, and because I love teaching, I'm like, well, look, I'll turn in my resume. I'm like, they're probably not going to hire an English teacher. Like, I have no business background or anything. I'm like, I'm not even a math teacher. Like, I'm an English teacher. So I turned in my resume, and I'm like, look, worst case scenario, they don't like me. My pride might be hurt a little bit, but I still have a job that I love. So really, what do I have to lose? And then they did in fact hire an English teacher, and so I've been here ever since, and I absolutely love it. And I always joke with some of my former students, like, I use a lot of math for someone who has English degrees.
That's great.
But I love it. And so the biggest challenge for me, I think, was really just figuring out how to establish myself in the role. Like, what all does it entail, and how. And then we started navigating growth pretty quickly after I came on. So figuring out how to pour into myself to where I could grow into this role that I felt like God had kind of put me in, and trusted me to do a good job. So,
and it's such a role of importance, right?
Yes, very much. Well, because and it's so funny too, because people are like, well, what exactly is an executive director? And some people will say, well, it's kind of like a CEO equivalent, from the business sector, like being a CEO of a nonprofit. But still, what does that mean? So I always tell people, I'm like, for CASA, I have two main responsibilities: making sure we got enough people and enough money to keep the train going to serve as many children as possible. And
the main thing.
That's it.
Keep the main thing.
Whatever has to be done day to day to make sure those two things can happen. That we've got our got enough people and we've got enough money to continue our mission. It looks different every day, but that's. And so just figuring out how to go from, I guess, kind of getting out of my own head and out of my own way of, I'm just an English teacher, like, kind of the imposter syndrome of it.
Yeah,
but
getting comfortable and stationary.
Yes.
So then you can gain strength from there. Because like you said, keeping the main two things cool and then branching off from there is never, rather than getting overstimulated and getting overwhelmed. That's nice. Let me first emphasize the program handles aids and necessities in a very efficient and considerate manner. How much do you dive into the effects of like the brain function in these children? Because obviously, would you say the early experiences help shape the outcome of children's future, basically?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there have been countless studies, like, not to nerd out, but like countless studies that have looked at like adverse childhood experiences and positive childhood experiences, and having adverse experiences can be detrimental, but also the addition of those positive childhood experiences can sometimes offset that, where those these kiddos can grow up and thrive, whereas if you only have if you have nothing but adverse experiences, then it can really derail their path and cause even more trauma. The effects of the trauma can be so much greater,
or alter decision making.
So when they get older, it's sometimes hard for them to kind of get to a place where they don't associate themselves with their trauma anymore. I know we all have traumatic experiences at some point in our lives, but being in a place where you learn to cope and heal and carry forward in spite of whatever has happened to you.
Not to nerd out, but just thought I'd throw that little pointer in there.
But as far as CASA, because all of our CASA volunteers are coming from different backgrounds, we don't really get involved from a therapeutic standpoint. But what we do is we train our CASA volunteers to look for signs to address concerns. And when we do so I talked about the first main role of a CASA volunteer, but the second main role is to gather information about the child's situation. And because we are court appointed and we are written into Kentucky revised statute, we're written into state law, our CASA volunteers have the authority really to get information from anybody in this child's life, their teachers, their doctors, their therapists, anybody. And so that's really where the CASA volunteer comes into play, is coordinating okay, well, I might not be a therapeutic professional, but they have one. So let me get with that person and see what concerns do they have. Maybe working with the social worker and the therapist to say, okay, we're all in agreement. We're not seeing an improvement with their mental health or their behavior. So what other options do we have? And just kind of sometimes coordinating those conversations to just propel their services forward, whether it's maybe trying something different like art therapy, which has been we had a case a while back that this child was really struggling with traditional therapeutic setting. They were very, very creative, very artistic, and so the CASA on the case was can we try art therapy? It seems like it would be a natural, but it just wasn't. That's not common practice to connect a child with art therapy. And
so evaluating basic criteria.
Yes. And then really just starting the conversation of, what other options are out there in terms of services, what might be a good fit for this kiddo, and then advocating, in the court setting that, hey, I think this is what this child would benefit from, or can we at least try it? What we're doing now isn't working, so can we try something different?
So it is similar to parenting.
It is very similar.
He or she's hyperactive, put them out there on the baseball field, soccer field, see what happens. Okay, they don't like that, Girl Scouts. So it's kind of throwing things out there and seeing what happens. So I understand.
Well, and one of the biggest things, kind of comparing it to parenting, one question that we get asked a lot is well, how do you, we always get people say oh, I would love to do that, but I don't know how I just want to take all the children home, or, I don't know if I could separate myself enough. But when you are going to bat for this child and, you're standing up in front of a judge and attorneys and everybody to say, hey, this child does not want to go back home, or this child, that's all they want is to go back home. We always share the child's wishes. Sometimes we don't agree with them because we know that's not what's, probably not what's going to be best for them.
So there's a balance. You don't want to go too much against their will.
Yeah. And because you still want them to have respect and know that they can call you. But at the same time, when you're giving it your all in that setting to advocate for them and help them work toward permanency, because that is our ultimate goal, is to help this child achieve permanency. And what that means is that they have a safe and loving environment that they can call home. And they get to stay there. And that could be adoption. It could be reunification with their parents or whoever their caregivers were. It could be permanent custody with a relative or a family friend, which is what we call fictive kin. Or it could be, helping them work towards that independent living of taking care of themselves and providing for themselves. And so on that journey of helping them, trying to advocate for whatever is needed to help them achieve that permanency, when you're working really hard to ensure that they're on their way to a safe and stable environment, it's a little bit easier, to not feel that they're safe and that they're getting to a place where they're getting the things that they need. And so you don't feel as called to I need to step in and intervene. But I always tell people too, I'm look, if you're worried about taking kids home, I can hook you up with a foster agency and we can get you to become a foster parent. So
that's be legitimized.
Yes. So definitely don't just take kids home that aren't yours.
Those would be snatching kids now.
but in all seriousness though, I think that in the foster care system and in child welfare, they're some of the most vulnerable kiddos that you come across that
Absolutely.
have, sometimes they're not being fed well at home. Sometimes they've been sexually abused at home.
Very common.
Everything on the spectrum of abuse and neglect. And so making sure that, if there's a criminal case involved, in addition to the dependency, neglect, and abuse case, where a child might have to testify or they might have to share information about what's happened to them, then our CASAs try to be there for them in that capacity as well. Now, we don't operate in that court setting, but a lot of times our CASAs will still show up as a support person for those kiddos.
So how did you deal with that at first? That's a lot of different possible scenarios and just a lot of commitment. So now around what ballpark range are y'all standing as far as numbers?
So in 2025, we served 312 children in our 5-county region.
Way from 2023.
And we have added another county since January 1. So now we're in a 6-county region.
It's almost...
This year so far, we've already served a little over 280 children.
Wow. Hey.
But the downside is that we have about 150 kiddos on our wait list. And what that means is...
The wait list.
Those are the children that our judges have said, hey, we need an extra set of eyes and ears. And that's really what our CASAs are. They are an extra set of eyes and ears on the case, so that way we can take all the information that they've gathered and share it in a court report to our family court judges and our district court judges, so that way they have kind of as many puzzle pieces as possible and as much information as possible so they can make sound decisions. And so when they appoint us to a case and we don't have an advocate to put on that case, we have to put them on a wait list. And we are constantly pulling from that wait list, but as we're pulling from it, our judges are continuously adding additional cases and additional children. So we have about 150 children right now on that wait list, and about 90 of those are out of Hardin County.
So this is a revolving door.
Yes.
Like you said, as cases are opening, they're closing as well. So it's...
Yeah.
Wow. So you're busy.
We do stay very busy. Very much so.
Wow. And on YouTube, it has a cool, interesting display of volunteer testimonies, home visits, one-on-one sessions, virtuals. Like I said, stories like Stevens and Lily's. And shout out to Melissa and was it Jose Torres?
Yes.
The gracious volunteers. They're extremely supportive.
Yeah, wonderful volunteers.
Yeah, so I've done a little homework on that, and that's great. Y'all put on they do a fabulous job. I mean, it's a wonderful program. I didn't even know it existed until 2 weeks ago. So just learning about it, and some of the individuals, I'm sure you've grown great relationships with not only the kids, but coworkers and volunteers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right. Do you sense any ongoing patterns that you've noticed geographically that stand out to you like a sore thumb? Like a common issue that you run across?
Honestly, one thing that maybe not like a common issue, but something that we've seen an increase in lately is like truancy and educational neglect.
Okay.
And I don't know for sure, and I don't know that, I'm sure there are people out there studying it. And, I was teaching during COVID, and like I said, started with CASA in January 2023. So I really think that a lot of kiddos and parents kind of got into this habit of really not having to go to school. We've seen a huge uptick in like what we refer to as educational neglect or habitual truancy. And we do work some of those cases as well. Anything from, we've got parents with a little kiddo, and that kiddo is missing 60 something days of school, and that's not okay. So working with them to figure out what is the problem? Is it a behavior issue that we're having a hard time getting that kiddo to school?
And like you said, y'all are able to collect information to get down to the nitty gritty.
Yes,
and that is the primary issue.
And that becomes so valuable, because if it's a transportation issue, okay, well, what resources, we cannot give you a car, but there are other organizations and resources in the community that can help with that.
Absolutely.
Or if you're in an area where you do have public transportation or, something like that, or the school bus is an option. How do we get the family to a place where they can do what needs to be done for the best interest of that child? And and then we see older kiddos too that we've got some big boys that are built like linebackers, and they're like, I'm not going to school, and mom's like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Right. I've seen it.
So sometimes just having those hard conversations with these older kiddos about, here's what happens if you don't go to school.
Right.
And unfortunately, sometimes that can lead to like juvenile, like them going to a juvenile facility.
Absolutely. Because it used to be different. It used to be, if you didn't go to school, guess who would suffer the consequence? Your parents.
Yeah. And it's still very much like that with those younger kiddos. But once they get old enough, I think it's, which is always an interesting dynamic to navigate, but helping the family be able to know, hey, here's, according to your social worker, this is what they've said you need to do in order to get your kiddos back, or and then, like I said, our responsibility is very different from the social worker, because they're looking at the whole family unit, and they're looking at what rights do the parents have and what services do the child need. We're only looking at that child. Now we totally understand that most of the time, and if family preservation is possible, like, we want these kiddos to be either with their parents, with family members, someone who shares their family, because we know that family preservation is important. But
that foundation.
Very much so.
Yeah.
But if we see that that's going to endanger that child in some way, we will be the first ones to say, like, pump the brakes on that, because this is not an okay environment, or this is not a good option for this child. And it can cause some friction sometimes with other professionals, because we don't always agree. And I just always tell them, I'm like, well, one of the main differences is that we're only looking at what is best for this child. We're not worried about what's best for anybody else involved in this case. We only care about what is going to be best for this child. And
so when people bump heads, who's usually in disagreements? Is it CASA with?
We sometimes have differing opinions, like from the social workers that are on the case.
Social workers with CASA. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, we have really good working relationship, I think, with our social workers, but sometimes sometimes we just have different recommendations, because they're looking at like the whole big picture, and for us the big picture is just that kiddo,
the child focus.
So it does very much kind of change the dynamics, and sometimes our CASA volunteers get frustrated, because they're like, we see that this is not going to play out well, and so, like, why can't we just go ahead and move on to this next step? But there's a lot of laws and regulations about how much time has to pass between between different situations, or different parts of the case.
So is it state regulated when it comes to that level?
A lot of that is. A lot of it is like state laws that our judges have to abide by in terms of how much time they have between hearings, or how long, kind of how much of a grace period a parent might be given to start working on their case plan before they look at changing that permanency goal to adoption. So and
there's just so many layers to this. Level of dysfunction at home, it could be anything,
and it can be so intimidating, I think, for someone like like, if you do not work in any type of field that deals with kiddos, people are like, well, I don't have a background. That's okay, because that's why we do that training, and the training kind of gives you all of the basic understanding
30 hours
of basic understanding of court and what you need. And then from there, like, we have a whole bunch of supplemental training and a plethora of information. So if and we try to be mindful too of, like, what is a CASA background versus what it, so we have a couple educators, and so if we know that this kiddo is really behind in school, and we suspect that they might qualify for special education services, then we might try to pair them with an educator who's going to be able to help them navigate that more easily than, one of our CASA volunteers who might be a small business owner.
So I like that. I like the understanding of taking the initiative, the consideration, but that collective cohesiveness, which you can't play every role, right?
Right.
You wear a lot of hats, but not every hat, right?
I do, yeah. Lots of. I always joke. I'm like, I've got one hat, but there's a lot of feathers in it.
It's a derby. It's a big derby hat. If you got one hat on, if that's a single Uno hat, yeah. Did you see the derby?
No, I didn't watch it.
It was one of the best derbies that I've seen.
Yeah, I went back and watched it after the fact, but it was really
Golden tempo. Cool. It started off at the end and this stretch that came all the way back on everybody.
Honestly, though, that's a great analogy for what it's like to navigate like some of these situations with these kiddos, because it might look like what you're rooting for is all the way at the end and there's no hope, and then all of a sudden things start falling into place.
I like
next thing you know, you're in first place, and that kiddo is exactly where you were hoping they would be. So
I like that analogy.
This is I'm glad you brought that up.
This was
a good analogy.
Cook
that sometimes it looks like things are falling behind and not working out the way that you want them to, and you just it's kind of that slow and steady. One of our staff members, she always says, the thing about CASA is that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
It's definitely a marathon. It's a process and progress.
Yeah. And so that is really what, we ask for. Typically, when we bring on a new CASA volunteer, we ask them for an 18 to 24 month commitment, because that's the average life of the case. And we want to make sure that when you sign up to be a CASA for a child, like, they can count on you. 100%. They have enough other people like coming in and out of their lives. We want to make sure that their CASA is going to be in it for the long haul and with them. The
consistency is important.
And we know life happens. Sometimes people are we're all navigating our own grief and trauma and just life and personal situations. But
absolutely,
and things happen, and we are so mindful of that. We've had I think this is one of my favorite. It was such an unconventional circumstance, but the epitome of life happens. We had a CASA volunteer who was military, and she had been with these kiddos for about 2 years and was getting stationed somewhere else in the United States. And she's like, I don't want to leave these kids hanging. And we're like, well, we have, they have to have a monthly in-person visit. And so we ended up kind of troubleshooting and coming up with this plan where we assigned a second CASA to the case. And so that CASA went and did the monthly in-person visits with the child, and then their other CASA, who was now somewhere else in the country, still FaceTimed them regularly.
Wow.
And they kind of tag teamed this case, so that way they still had this person that they built a strong relationship with.
Wow.
And also we were following all of our rules, regulations, laws. And to me, that was just such a cool situation that she's like, my job is taking me elsewhere, but also I signed up and I made a commitment to these kids, and I'm not going to leave them hanging. And that was such a cool thing to be a part of, and to be able to witness that she felt so passionately about making sure that these kiddos had what they needed, and for the other CASA to step up and be like, let's do this together as a team.
Willingness, the determination as a collective
and
unit.
Speaking of team, I know you mentioned Melissa and Jose Torres.
Yes.
We have a couple of CASA volunteers that they might be married couples or best friends or sisters that advocate as a team. So
That's
if
cool.
it's a more complex case, and one of my favorite things about that is it gives you kind of like a battle buddy to go through the situation with, because it is hard when we have so many strict confidentiality laws and policies that once you take your oath to be a CASA, you don't really get to talk about your case with anybody else other than your CASA staff person.
Right.
And so when you find someone else in your life who's passionate about making a difference for a child, and you decide to do it together, well, now that you've just brought one more person into your village that is there for you, and you get to be there for each other while also being there for this child or these children that you're serving. And so I think that's a really cool dynamic when you find a buddy that you can go through the process and the training and make the commitment together
and become battle tested each other too.
Yeah, your frustrations and your concerns and you know, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I know typically, like, my husband and I, sometimes I'm irrational and he's the voice of reason. And
shout out to the hub.
It's almost always like that, actually. I'd love to say, you know, I am a good voice of reason most of the time, but sometimes our emotions get the best of us. And so having someone else there to be like, you need to take a second, take a deep breath, and let's start back at the beginning and let's work our way through this and talk about it together. And so it's good, you know, to have, if you've got someone in your life who's a good checks and balances person for
Absolutely.
you. It's wonderful to be able to go through that experience together and know that at the end of it, you know, that together you have made a difference in a child's life or in the children's lives
That's
that you've
the thing.
served. So
Just that gratification of it. Is that your biggest thing, or what the end result could possibly be?
And sometimes, unfortunately, like, some of our cases don't turn out how we'd like them to. You know, we have a kiddo that we really want them to recommit and we want them to work towards independence, and they're like, yeah, so I'm 18 and I'm out of here. But knowing that, I think, yes, the gratification of knowing that you had that impact, but also sometimes just the gratification of knowing that you did everything you could.
You put it all out on the field.
Even if it didn't work out the way you wanted it to, that you gave it everything you had.
Absolutely.
And knowing that regardless of how things propel forward after that, you know, after the case closure or whatever, you know, whatever the end result of the case is, knowing that child is still better off than what they would have been if you had not been in their life at all.
Yes, the percentage go up positively.
Yes,
at least a few percentages, right? What CASA exemplifies, right? Just putting in your 110% effort, and feeling good about it. So I love this program. Are there any key areas of improvement or major goals heading forward? I know you want to reduce the number of cases. Obviously. Yes, we would. You want to be unemployed, right?
Right. Yeah. yes. Please, like, that would be the ultimate goal.
Right.
Realistically, what I think is, you know, attainable in the next few years is I would love for us to get to a place where we have less than 50 children on the wait list.
Right.
Because, and it's so crazy because people are always like, well, how many people? Like, oh, there's 150 kids, you need 150 people. That's not true, because we've got a lot of sibling groups, and so you know, on average, you know, we might have like 2 to 4 kids on a case, and we have a lot that might only have 1 child, and we've had some that have had as many as 9 children. But you know, on average, about 2 to 3 kiddos, and so if we could get, you know, 50 to 60 individuals from our community, to, you know, to sign up and make this commitment to help us change a child's life, then, you know, we could get that wait list down to 50 or less.
There you go.
And
it takes a community action.
It does.
So if you want to volunteer, applications are available. Like she says, it comes with mandatory training requirements. But don't let that shy you away. Just the website,
CASAHeartland.org.
CASAHeartland.org. Just tap into that. There'll be the red buttons, easy to access. Just get on there, fill out your application, and I'm sure she'll contact you shortly after.
And if you're not sure, like, if you're like, oh, first of all, the application does not mean that you're making the commitment. The application is really just, hey, I'm interested in this. But if that even gives you some stress, we have a really cool quiz on our website that you can fill out, and it's, is CASA volunteering right for you? And it asks you, like, hey, can you make this level of time commitment? Can you pass a background check? Can you do you have a basic computer skills? Basically, like, can you type? Are you going to be able to make room in your life to visit a child at least once a month?
Home visits.
And that's the basic, I mean, that is the bare minimum, is visiting this child once a month, typically in their home. But sometimes, like, if it's not, you know, we always try to make sure that first visit is in their placement setting, whether it's their home or a foster home or a group home with a relative. We try to make sure that first placement or that first visit happens in their placement, just so we can make sure that their home environment, or, you know, whether it's temporary or potentially permanent, is a good place for them. But then after that initial visit, like, I had a kiddo that his placement was still at home with mom and dad, and he wasn't going to tell me about anything, he wasn't going to say anything negative about his mom and dad in front of mom and dad. So I'm like, okay, something's off. Let me go get some Chick-fil-A and come visit you at school.
And you got down to the nitty-gritty.
And then, we were able to have an open conversation where he was able to share, this is what's going on, or this is what I'm frustrated about.
Away from what he's
out
the
of that
normal
environment, and really be able to share his concerns. And that made a huge difference. And so
that's interesting.
But that is the bare minimum. It's just visiting the child once a month. And then outside of that, most of any other CASA work or casework can be done with emails and telephone calls.
There you go.
But
I think the passion.
Yeah.
I think the passion is going to automatically add a little bit more onto that, though.
Yeah.
Like those are the basics.
Yeah.
But me, I'm like, hey, you hungry? There's going to be things and additives that just do off the strength of taking the initiative.
Most of our CASA volunteers, they go above and beyond. They check in with their kiddos once a week and
I seen Lily on YouTube. I'm like, I got to get her some ice cream with some Dippin' Dots with, you know what I mean? I had to.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because that, like, explaining to a young child, like, what is a CASA volunteer? And so we have this book that's called Lily Meets Her CASA.
Wow.
And fun fact, the Lily in the video is actually my daughter.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and her name is Lily. So it was a natural fit. And I was I'm gonna need you to be in a video. And now she's a pro at it.
Hey, she's the marketability.
She's like, are we doing it? Do I get to be in the video? And I'm like, not this time. She's like, can I get snacks for people who are in the video? And I'm like, yes. So
big shout out to Lily. She's a superstar.
She is fantastic. And actually, we had all the snow back in January. I love telling the story because it's so funny. They were doing their non-traditional instruction for like 2 weeks. And so I'd bring her to the office. We'd get set up on the Chromebook. We would do school and everything. And then, we get any schoolwork done that needed to be done. And then she'd hang out at the office with me doing, odd and end little jobs and projects, stamping envelopes for me, things like that, helping write thank you cards. And
you got
it was time to go. It was wonderful. And we had so much fun and she enjoyed it. And then it's time to go back to school. The snow kind of subsided. And I'm like, all right, we gotta go to bed tonight. You got school tomorrow. And she's like, what do you mean?
Say what?
And I'm like, the snow's gone. You have to go back to school tomorrow.
I'm an employee now. What are you talking about?
That's exactly. She goes, I thought I was just going to do computer school, and then I worked at CASA now. And I was like, that's funny.
That's adorable,
no,
though.
you got to go back to school. I'm like, but you can come work at CASA after school anytime you want for free.
She's like, I'm a content creator now. What are you talking about?
Yeah, when we did our PinWheel plantings, which we went from having 2 to 6, and we've worked really hard to not schedule them during spring break because no one's here for spring break. And but in the past, when we'd had any on spring break, she'd been able to come with us and participate. But then this year, she's like, what are you doing today, Mom? I'm like, well, we have a pinwheel planting. And she's like, what? And I said, yeah, we're doing our pinwheel planting. And she's like, I need to be there. She goes, I'm the CASA girl, and I'm supposed to be at the pinwheel plantings. And so I did let her miss school to volunteer one day.
Awesome.
I was like, you can't miss 6 days of school. But I said, but you can miss one. And, because they just, none of them happened to fall during spring break this year.
Got you a shop worker right there.
Yeah, so she is wonderful and really has a pretty good understanding for an elementary schooler of what we do. And
she's gonna need a name tag, a desk.
Yeah. So she's really great and has really helped us. Nice having her kind of on hand to participate. But my favorite thing about her being able to help out at CASA is that she sees the impact that we make on kiddos' lives when she participates in these videos, and it's helped her understand that not everybody has the same. Everybody has a different type of home.
Absolutely.
And different people that make up that home. And so,
it's even more apparent to you now, huh?
It is. And and it's been really, she's asked some hard questions. But I think, it's made me a better mother, and I, feel better about the kiddo that I'm raising because
smart kid.
She knows that everybody, exactly what you said, that everybody's story is different, everybody's home is different,
and that life is about love.
Yes
It's about spreading love.
We want to be there for our friends and our neighbors and whatnot. So it's been a cool experience getting to see her be a part of, kind of my CASA journey has kind of become our family journey. Now everybody's invested.
It's a family thing, the
husband,
CASA family.
Yeah, he drives it. I'm like, I need a favor. And he's like, is this a husband favor or a CASA favor? And I'm like, go ahead and get your truck.
I need the CASA shirt on. I need your hat on with the truck.
So it's
they all have name tags too?
No, actually they don't.
No name tags?
But maybe I need to work on that. That'll be a fun Christmas
extra
present
t-shirts,
for everybody. Yeah, so
I'm definitely gonna need my t-shirt, extra large, no doubt about it.
Family investment in the mission, which has been really cool. So,
there you go, the CASA family. Yeah, and y'all stay busy, I'm sure. Which April, I'm sure, was a busy month for you.
It is. It's a whirlwind, and like I said, we hit the child abuse prevention really hard because I want to be out of a job.
Hey, unemploy her, please. Let's do it. Let's help the community
go
out.
Back to the classroom, and we'll be good. But we do, because it's. I think a lot of times people think that child abuse or neglect is, you think that someone has to live a certain way or come from a certain background or that but honestly, a lot of what we see sometimes is like, maybe a parent lost their job and now they're on edge and a little more irritable because they don't know how they're gonna take care of their family already, and then that leads to maybe a domestic violence situation or an abuse situation, and it's a lot of times it's not. It's the normal stressors of everyday life that get the best of people.
So it's more scenario, situational driven.
Yes, and I mean we've seen. Just all kinds of situations.
Because just that word abuse, I mean, there's so many different levels of just the terminology. Abuse. I mean, there's verbal abuse. There's
emotional abuse, physical abuse.
Right. So there's levels,
and we see a little bit of all of it. And like I mentioned, it's our CASA volunteers are not. Like, we're not therapists. We're not. And even if they are, like, you're not that child's therapist. You're their CASA volunteer, and so
that's in addition.
Making sure that that we train our CASA volunteers, and like I don't think I finished this earlier. I get distracted, but when we, once your initial training is done as a CASA volunteer, we have books, we have recommended movies, like we have all kinds of different things that count as continuing education. And so we've had a case in the past where a child had some medical issues. None of us are doctors or nurses. Like, we didn't know exactly. Well, we do have one retired nurse on staff, but it was a very extenuating circumstance, and we're like, okay, well, step number one is we got to figure out how to get educated on this together and quickly. And so making sure that your tool belt, that we're continuously adding tools to it, so that way you can be the best CASA for this child in this moment. And if they have extra needs or circumstances, then we want to make sure that we're pouring into that CASA volunteer, so that way they can have the tools and resources that they need to give that child the advocacy that's needed for them to be in the best circumstance possible.
Due to the adjustments, right? Yeah, just adjusting. So that's great. I'm sure y'all do a great job of that. You would have been doing it for years now, and I love what you do. Just continue to help the community out. You're fully embraced. Community people, please come volunteer. You can help out with events, sponsorships, donations. Even if you're not a hands-on advocate and volunteer, there are so many ways to help out this program. So get in contact with Michelle. Get in contact with your local resources. Hit her up. Email. You can hit up the website. You can hit up on social media. I'm sure she will respond sooner or later, because she got that big hat on, that big derby hat. Is there any special shout outs that you want to give to people that help you on the daily, or special resources or things of that nature throughout the community that you want to draw a light towards?
I mean, our staff is incredible. I know that it's funny, we all have different, whether it's professional or personal backgrounds, that have in some way, I think, put us right where we need to be. So shout out to all of our staff. They're fantastic, and I know have such big hearts for what we do. To our board members that, you know,
Absolutely.
also, I think if you're getting involved in CASA, it doesn't matter what capacity it is, you've got a big heart and want to help.
This affects all of us in some form or fashion.
But our board members, we have a phenomenal board that provides such strong governance and strategic oversight to make sure that we're on a good path where we can sustain our mission, and very much appreciate their leadership. And then, you know, number one is our CASA volunteers. They are our mission, and, you know, they're the ones who are doing the hands-on work with these kiddos to make sure that, you know, we're working towards getting them that permanency and a happy, healthy childhood. So
nice.
Our CASA volunteers are the absolute heart of our mission and everything that we do. And, you know, we couldn't do what we do without them. You know, people have asked before, like, why is it that CASA is a volunteer organization and we don't do paid advocacy? And, you know, it's the ripple effect, because, you know, when we have people who are willing to volunteer their time, we can have such a greater impact on our region than we could if, you know, I think we've got 11 staff members. So if 11 of us were advocating for for kiddos, it's not the same as having 110 CASA volunteers who are out there advocating for typically more than one child at a time. And so that ripple effect that it creates in the community and
100%.
And setting these kiddos, because our kids are our future.
You're right, because when you do something without pay, that kind of adds that reassurance that
like you're doing it because it's coming from your
it's
heart.
Straight genuine. You know what I mean? So yeah, I understand that. And before I forget, could you elaborate on the PinWheel event?
Yeah, absolutely. So every spring, we typically do it at the end of March, so that way we can leave the pinwheels out for the entirety of April, or as long as we can, until the grass has got to get cut. But we have our community event every year. We plant typically 1,000+ pinwheels, and it just represents the children in our community. The pinwheel itself is kind of like an icon for that happy, healthy childhood.
Like a trademark symbol?
Yeah, kind of like it just really represents like the whimsy and the happiness, carefree childhood that every single child deserves.
Right.
And so so we try to host that event every year and invite the community out. We always hand out resources, you know, things to look at. The state of Kentucky does Prevent Child Abuse Kentucky is a statewide organization, and they have a program called Lean on Me, which is where they spread information and awareness of, like, you know, check in on your neighbors. You know, if you've got family members, neighbors, friends, church people, whoever is in your life, and you know maybe they have a little one and they're bringing a new baby into the world, you know, check on the people in your life, see what they need, be willing to step up and offer, you know, take them a casserole, take them, you know, offer to hang out for a little bit, be in a listening ear. You know, sometimes it's those little things that go a long way when people are in that stressful environment. So we try to hand out a lot of information from Prevent Child Abuse Kentucky, and just make sure that people know where they can access resources to prevent the abuse and neglect.
That's important.
So that way, hopefully, they don't need a CASA. Right. You know, because we've been able to put those resources in place to prevent that abuse and neglect on the front end.
Nice. So PinWheel event, that sounds amazing. I seen your sit down with Greg Milby. Is that his name?
Yes, that one's been a while. But yep, I did.
But you know, I did see where you mentioned free tacos at one of the events.
So
That'll lure them in.
We are so grateful. And in the past, we've had Juanito street tacos come out.
Juanitos.
This year, we changed up a little bit. We were like, we gotta spread the food truck love, and we had Papa Haoli's Hawaiian food truck come out.
Talk heavy.
Not to brag, but I think every year they've run out of food. Every year we have depleted a food truck because, but it really is just a testament of the community support that we have. But
culture is important, like you said. The small things to pull in and pull out of that's major.
Yeah,
and that's the whole point. A lot of these kids don't have that foundation to pull from. So I have to ask you this before you go: iPhone or Android?
I'm an iPhone girly.
I'm glad you did. I knew we loved you. You did not disappoint.
Android, we hate on the green a little bit.
What is
we
an
have
Android?
a couple people in the office that have have Androids, and it really messes
they
up
have to
the
wake
staff
up.
group text. It's fine.
No, I'm kidding.
We still love them. They're great at their jobs. They've got the heart. They just have the wrong phone.
Yeah, they'll understand one day. But big shout out to the CASA staff members. You all are appreciated, embraced. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying what you do. We'll send in my donation and get my t-shirt to rock and let people know about the CASA program. And I hope everybody else does so too. So let the community know. Awareness is what's important, right?
Absolutely.
So make sure if you want to get involved, make sure you just hit up Michelle. Email.
Yep, you can email, go to our website, call us.
Yeah.
CASAHeartland.org.
CASAHeartland.org.
270-982-2274.
Yes, and even maybe you could show up, maybe even put a hand into the events. Yeah, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. This was wonderful.
Yes, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all. Let's get to business.
Yo, yo, yo.